Hey everybody, good evening, and thank you very much for joining us here for the fourth Percussion Community webinar that we're hosting this season. My name is Caleb Rothy. I'm the Percussion Education Coordinator for WGI, and I'm really excited to have a special guest with us this evening. Our special guest is John Campese of Infinity, Infinity 2, Infinity 3, all of the Infinities. John, thank you so much for joining us tonight.
Hey, how you guys doing?
So everybody, if this is your first time tuning in, we'll go over a couple of the quick ground rules. You've got a couple of tools over there on the side where you can ask a question. There's a little text-based question box. We definitely want to encourage you to use that. I think these are most engaging when you can share with us what's on your mind and we can answer any questions you have. So if you know you have some questions for myself or for John, feel free to start typing away in there anytime you'd like, and we'll just kind of take those in the order that they come in. John and I have a couple of things that we certainly want to talk about. I want to pick John's brain a bit on Infinity and that organization and how it's grown into what it is, but we certainly want to make sure that this meets your needs. So we're getting pretty close to the end of the season. We're recording this a couple of days before the last couple regionals of the season. WGI West and WGI Mid East will be taking place this weekend. So everybody at this point has their whole show out on the floor, and now it's just a matter of tweaking things and making modifications and trying to perfect everything that we're doing. So I know John has been down that road many, many times for many years. I know I've been down that road many times, so we are happy to talk anything and everything tonight. It can be into-season logistics or tips for maxing it all out or making the right adjustments, pulling on the right strings at this point in the season, or anything else that's on your mind. So feel free to hit us up when you've got some questions.
Cool.
Hey, John, if you don't mind, I would love to just jump straight in. I want to share, first of all, that I'm a huge fan of Infinity, have been for many, many years, and have kind of been in awe of the growth of the organization. I know I was fortunate enough to be able to start an independent group many years ago out here in Southern California, and I remember what a massive undertaking that was to get it off the ground. And it has since then turned into two programs. I can't even imagine, though, the process for adding a second ensemble and then adding a third ensemble. So I know we have a lot of people on here that are charged with running their program. Maybe it's a scholastic group or maybe it's an independent group. And I'm wondering if you can just share a little bit of insight of how Infinity got started. I guess we'll kind of start there, and then we can dive into how it's turned into this multi-ensemble behemoth that you're running. So talk to us a little bit about Infinity. When did it start and how did it start?
Well, it actually started in 2005. It was under the name of First Degree. We started it under an organization here in Orlando, Florida. We were a PIO group. 2005, 2006, we were fortunate enough to win that year. Whoops, we didn't know what we were doing. We just won. And then we sort of got big pants and decided that we wanted to jump into the world-class thing. The organization that we were under didn't want us to proceed into that, so we went on our own. It was me and Tom Hurst was my partner then. It still is, the founder. And Lee Hansen, he's still with us. We started Infinity, and we got Scott Hughes, who is the president of PAC, which is Pageantry Arts Concepts, out of South Florida. He is the director of Strike, and Strike Wins and Strike 2. Called us and said, hey, come under our nonprofit. We were like, great. So we started Infinity in 2007. So we're under the PAC umbrella, and this is sort of hard to explain, but Infinity itself started in 2007 under PIW. 2007, 2008, blah, blah, blah. We started I2 in 2013. We just started getting so many kids auditioning. We didn't want them to go, they had nowhere else to go. Actually, in Orlando, there's not a lot of density with the independent groups, and even the scholastic groups. There's about 30 in our circuit, but the circuit goes from Jacksonville all the way down through Tampa. So it's a pretty large geographical area, but not a lot serving the Orlando area for some reason. So we were taking on that responsibility and giving the kids a place to go. In 2016, we added I3. So I fought it because it's my responsibility to deal with it, right? So, but I couldn't say no to it. But that's it in short. The pageantry arts thing, just to give you a little hindsight on that, it's the nonprofit. Scott Hughes started it. It was with Strike just by itself. And then we came on with Infinity. Now it's the 3 Infinity ensembles, the 4 Strike ensembles with the color guard, and also Ancient City Ensemble in Gainesville. Okay, so the whole parent organization covers all of those ensembles.
That's tremendous. And it blows my mind again, just talking about the complexity of starting one group. But I mean, when you really start to think about creating that umbrella that 8 different performing ensembles are all kind of under, there's all sorts of stuff that you can do in terms of scaling and shared resources, in terms of the logistics and the management, and in terms of insurance for the organization and all that other kind of stuff that really helps quite a bit. But I think my big takeaway is it didn't start like that. It started humbly with small beginnings, and then things just kind of naturally grow and are outcroppings from that. Would you agree with that, John?
Yeah, and we all run autonomously. I mean, the strike organization down south. I mean, they do their own thing. They run their organization like they run it, and we run our Infinity totally the way we run it, and Ace does as well. So we don't get in each other's way, and we're competitive with each other. We don't share anything as far as design or secrets or what we're going to do or anything like that. So, as far as that's concerned, we blaze our own path per se, and we struggle our own struggles. So, we definitely have, it's been, we've been at this for 12, 13 years now, and it's been a lot of hard work and getting our soldiers together and, making our deals with our facilities people. And it's a lot of blood, sweat, and tears, man. You know it. So.
Yep. And that's kind of the next thing I wanted to ask you about. With 3 groups, I'd love for you to share a little bit how you manage facilities. Like, where do you rehearse? Are all 3 groups rehearsing in the same location? How do you manage that? How logistically does it work behind the scenes?
We are very fortunate. Each ensemble has their own facility. They're within 10 miles of each other holistically. Um, Infinity World has been in the same facility since 2005 at Oviedo. And basically, I was teaching high school band there. And it's basically a back scratching situation. I mean, it's in kind donations, be it staffing. The last thing I did for Oviedo High School is I set up a Consumer grant for those guys. And that was a pretty big deal for the school, and I got that put together for the school. And the way I go into the facilities things, is never give me. It's always trying to figure out how to present something to the school before I ask for anything, right? So even though you don't have any cash per se or money, you have to figure out a way to present something to them, a value, than just walking in and taking over their facility, right? Infinity 3, we own all that equipment. So I am letting that school use all of that equipment in kind, right? That's at Timber Creek High School. Their gear was getting sort of ragged, so they have brand new gear that they're using that's going to get turned over every season. So that was a plus. So they're like, come on in, right? So things like that. That it's always, I think it's always, you have to go at it with you can't just go in with a take, it's got to be a give,
Yeah. Yeah, I had an independent director reach out earlier this year and said, "Hey, how do I get free rehearsal facilities for my ensemble?" And my own personal answer is I don't know of anybody that just gets free facilities. You're paying for it in some way, shape, or form, either by cutting a check, which a lot of people want, and it makes sense. You're using their light and electricity and custodial staff and all that other kind of stuff, or by working out some sort of in-kind or barter situation in terms of staffing or borrowing equipment or doing clinics or writing books for the the program, or something like that. So that makes a lot of sense, absolutely, with the way you've set that up. So you talked about where Infinity's World Group rehearses. Talked about I3 and where they rehearse. How about Infinity 2?
Infinity 2 is at another high school at Winter Springs, which is probably about actually 5 miles away from Oviedo, and they're at their location. Great facility. We had to do some container situations for that school. They've been very open to having us there. We have some equipment needs that they needed, and we made some purchases for their high school program. And we just worked that into the budget, and it's really beneficial to us, because we have a site, and they have a home. So, and they've been there since the second year of their existence, and it's been working out great. So.
That's fantastic. Talk to me a little bit now about the design and the instructional team that you have. Is it the same design team that works with all three ensembles? Do you have kind of the same instructional staff, or is there a little bit of a hybrid model? How do you guys set it up?
The way we have it set up is this three separate design teams for each, the separate design team for each group. Okay. And basically the way I look at it is almost developmental for the organization as a whole. I'd like to see development from I3 to I2 to the World Group. Obviously, the people that are, the main designers in the World Group will not be there forever. I need to develop talent, to take their place someday, whenever they decide not to do it anymore. And we need to develop fresh, new talent for the activity. So I have three separate design teams and going at it and making their own mark in the activity. So, yeah.
That's awesome.
I have an overall artistic director, though, that oversees everybody.
So. Kind of oversees the whole organization. It goes, this is the spirit behind Infinity. Sure. The way we do things. These are the kind of, this is our core values to the way that we put together programs and interact. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. How about in terms of, here's one of the things that's always been so impressive to me. It seems like Central Florida in general is really strong in the independent sphere. There are a number of independent groups that are all kind of out of that same region, but not the same number of scholastic groups. There are certainly a handful, and we know a lot of them by name and reputation and see them do well at World Championships every year. But it definitely feels a bit heavy on the independent side. So without that really strong scholastic base that we see in lots of other regions that feeds into the independent groups, how do you guys go about membership for your independent ensembles and recruitment and things like that?
Well, the fall stuff is pretty strong down here, so that's a pretty good recruitment base. The winter thing is steady, but it's not growing yet, and we're still working on that. And that has to do with, I think it's just where we're at in our history, as far as when, these kids get out and we start graduating people, out of our organization, and they get out and, start getting out there and teaching basically in their high schools and stuff. I mean, all of our kids are basically running all the high school programs,
right.
In the area. So it's just a matter of that taking root and, getting the band directors to buy into that, I guess. It's still sort of fresh down here, even though it's been going on for about 15 years, I guess. But that's only how old it is here. It's not that old. So that's where we're at.
In terms of the membership for the three ensembles, are they mostly college age students that have graduated high school? Do you have some high school students that are in those ensembles? What's kind of the makeup and composition of the groups?
Infinity 3 is 100% high school. If you're out of high school, you age out of that group. Okay, so there's a cutoff age in Infinity 3. Infinity 2 and the World line is wide open. Very rarely will you have a high school kid in the World line. There's maybe a couple. And then Infinity 2 is a lot of college kids with probably a dozen high school kids maybe.
Here's one thing. You and I kind of talked about this, and I'm wondering if you could share it. it has been my experience that in a lot of regions with a strong independent group, or at least a group that's trying to grow and aspiring to be really good, that there seems to be some friction between some of those independent groups and the local band directors that represent the music programs. And I'm just wondering philosophically, because we talked about it, and it seems like you have a really healthy relationship with the larger music ed community in your area. If you could talk a little bit about your philosophy there and about how you've set up that relationship between the independent groups that are not grounded in a school setting and then also the school music scene that's happening.
Yeah, I mean, I've been in this town since forever. I mean, I grew up here. I mean, I lived here. I went to high school here. I went through the school system here. My philosophy is based on what those guys think. I mean, I champion their programs. Whatever they want is what they're going to get. You know, I will bend my program to make it fit their programs. I want them to champion my program. I want this to fit into their system, right? I want this to work for their kids. I want this to, them to, you know, make their kids better for when they go back into their program. So we've really made a great working relationship between the high school band directors and even the college band directors as well. You know, all the educators in the state have been pretty positive with us. And that's probably at the forefront of our mantra as far as where we're at, philosophically around here. Between me and Tom, I mean, Tom graduated from UF with his master's degree just recently. And, it's been really important with our relationship with the music educators in Florida that we are on point with those guys, and we have a great working relationship with them and their students.
And I think anybody that's watching, it's certainly worth backing it up and watching that piece again if you're watching a recording. I can't tell you how many stories I've heard of an independent group coming in and basically burning bridges with lots of the local music educators in the area because they're recruiting a student perhaps out of their high school group, or 3 students showed up at auditions and they're pretty good, and so you bring those groups into the fold and then you find out, oh my gosh, these are high school seniors or juniors, and the kids are like, I don't want to do my high school program anymore, I want to jump into this thing instead. And I can't tell you how many times I've been in the situation where I'm trying to mediate between an independent group that is just trying to get the best membership they can and a high school band director who feels like their students are being poached or pulled out of a scholastic music setting for the benefit of this independent thing. And they don't understand it. And they're looking at this like, who are these guys that are siphoning off some of my best kids? Because let's face it, those are the best kids, the ones that are reaching out and trying to do amazing additional things. So anybody that's in charge of running a program, specifically an independent program, I can't underscore enough how important it is to establish positive relationships, and positive relationships that go beyond one season or one set of students that that might fill a hole really well in your ensemble. Think about, like, what is the 5-year plan for supporting music education in this region and being an advocate and an ally for the local band directors? What's the 10-year plan? And as John said at the beginning, approach the relationship of what can I do to help these people out so that they talk positively about my program, kindly about my program, so that they see us as a force of good rather than as a force of evil in the world of the marching arts in our local region. I think if you build those bridges and you make those inroads, it's nothing but positives long term. Yeah, it means that there maybe are a couple of kids here or there where you're like, they'd fit really well into the ensemble right now, but if I do that, it's going to potentially damage this relationship. And I'd rather have this kid, once they graduate high school and the band director is encouraging them to come audition for this, or I'd rather work with them to find a way that the student can be successful in their own program and then later participate in mine. So huge advice, really valuable stuff. Yeah, John, go ahead.
Wait your turn, you're going to have that one kid later plus the rest of his students when it's their turn as well, instead of none of them, that's your other, option. So
yeah, like, do I want one now or do I want 3 every season for the next decade? And that one right now, you may be able to like talk that student and talk their parents into joining the program, but you have permanently burned that bridge, and it's really hard to ever repair that damage once it's been done. So just be mindful of that. I don't want to tell anybody how to run their program, but it's so important that we think about the larger ecosystem that we're in rather than just what's best for my group right now for this season. When you do that, you can never go wrong. So thank you, John, for sharing that.
Yes, sir.
All right, let's see. Talked about that. Talked about pack. Thank you so much for sharing that. Oh, I know what I want to do. I want to pick your brain a little bit on travel and on getting your group on the road to somewhere. And I think this is going to be equally valuable for anybody that is teaching a scholastic or an independent group. John, you've got one regional that's in your backyard every single year. But if you want to attend another WGI regional or attend WGI World Championships, it's a long trip for the ensemble. And I know that you just took Infinity's World Group and Infinity 2 to the South Regional in Hattiesburg, Mississippi, I think 1 week ago. And I looked it up. That trip is about 600 miles each way, 9+ hours on the bus
I flew,
each way.
man. I don't know. I flew. I'm not going to lie.
So I'm wondering if you could share a little bit how you do something. I kind of mapped it out. I'm sure it's not the longest trip that anybody ever takes to get to a regional, but you guys have gone now 2 years in a row to that event. And I'm just wondering if you can talk a little bit about the undertaking of the logistics for a trip of that scale. Because I know we have a lot of people that take their group on the road, but it's 100 miles to a regional or 250, not 600. So talk us through that a little bit. How was the experience and how did it all kind of play out for you?
Well, it's a real good sort of a test run for us, for Dayton, actually. Those are good little test runs. We do when did we leave? We left on Thursday evening. It was like a 9 o'clock leave. We had all the trucks and buses rolling on that night. So it was Thursday night leave, arrived Friday. We went through the night on that one. Thursday night leave, Friday late morning arrival. And we did stay at a school on that trip. We did not hotel that trip, thanks to Tony and the gang up there and DJ over there at Oak Grove High School. So we did stay there. We had both Infinity and Infinity 2 stay at Oak Grove for that show. So that saved us a little on that. So that helped us out. And did the show Saturday, Sunday, and then booked it home right after the finals run Sunday afternoon, made it back Sunday, Monday morning. No, what was it? Late Sunday night, early Monday morning, like 5 o'clock in the morning, something like that.
Okay. And then everybody was right back to school and right back to work a couple
Actually,
hours after that.
it was spring break when they got back, so it was perfect timing for us. So yeah,
Quite helpful.
yep.
So you guys all took a charter bus to get out there. Is that correct?
2 charter buses and all the trucks and boxes and all that stuff. So yep.
Awesome. How many equipment trucks roll as part of your caravan for those two ensembles?
Infinity 2 still runs in box trucks. So they had 2 box trucks. World Line is running the 53-foot semi and a box truck. So that's what we're running on those guys.
2 buses and 6 trucks. That's quite the caravan from Orlando to Hattiesburg. I love it. And you said that you stayed out at a high school there. So both ensembles were at the high school. And I know that they've got some really wonderful people in that region that help kind of connect those dots and everything. Did you have to pay for those housing facilities when you were there, or did they offer them up free of charge for you?
They offered them free of charge. Thank you. Thank you.
That's awesome. And that probably goes back to just establishing those connections, reaching out, networking. I have to imagine that while you guys were there, you were also rehearsing at the facility. Did you guys run any rehearsals there?
Yes, we did. Yeah, and Oak Grove has a pretty valid ensemble as well, so we were sharing with their rehearsal time as well. So we were all dancing in that gym. So,
and then the benefit for the Oak Grove students and ensemble, I imagine, is they've got Infinity and Infinity 2 right in their backyard and can check out rehearsal and kind of get an up close behind the scenes look at all of that. So huge benefits to local programs that are willing to kind of host you guys for the weekend. That's fantastic.
Yeah, it was the second year staying there in a row, so it was fun. we got, it was comfortable for us too. So it was cool.
Awesome. And how about locally, when you're traveling just to a regular competition like a circuit show or something like that? How do you guys normally do transportation? Do all the performers get themselves there? Is it a carpool situation? What do you guys normally do?
It depends where it is. Like for the Tampa Regional, that's about a 90-minute car ride for us. The Open and World Group will carpool to that. I3 with the high school kids, I will charter a bus for them because I have some pretty young kids in that group. So they will take a charter bus to that show. Um, and the older kids will carpool. So um, just for liability, I think it's a little safer. So that's what I roll with those guys.
Definitely. All right, we've got a couple of questions that have come in, so we'll start to field these, John. And if anybody else has an additional question for us, feel free to type it in, and we can kind of take these things on the fly. The first question is wondering about when your ensembles completed their show. Like, when did you have the whole thing out there? I have to imagine for the regional last weekend, you wanted both ensembles to perform their whole, complete, full show. So can you kind of break it down for all three of the ensembles when, kind of estimate for us when you had the whole production out there?
Infinity 3 finished their show probably 2 weeks ago. Infinity 2 finished their show the day before the Hattiesburg Regional. Infinity World was done at the Tampa Regional. So with a little bit of ornaments to put on for Hattiesburg. So
Awesome.
they've been done a little.
So kind of scaled for the three ensembles, but by the time they go to the big events, got the whole thing out and ready to go.
Yeah.
Awesome. Do you have any tips for us now that the full shows are out there on the floor? Any tips or suggestions for what you're concentrating on at this point in the season? I know you've got a great staff that's doing most of the in the trenches work every single week, but any tips for at this point in the season, what it is that the ensembles are really trying to hone in on and concentrate on?
The World line is just trying to, polish and get clean, going into Dayton. And seeing what other kinds of tricks we can pull out of the bag, obviously. The open line is, trying to get clean as well. And, just getting they have a gang of props. I mean, there are prop proving ground. That's what Infinity 2 is for us. They have, the props from hell, but they're getting that thing all worked out. Infinity 3 is just, they're working all the fundamentals, man, and they're just getting it locked down. They have a nice A show and it's perfect, so they're just going to work it to the end. So
awesome. Fantastic. Hey, I've got one additional question here for you. This person is wondering, since you've got three ensembles that are competing at World Championships, do you have any tips for somebody that's bringing their group to World Championships for the first time?
My tip is try to, logistically, I would try to reach out to as many people as possible just to get sort of the insights on the nuances, like depending on which arena you're going to, just to try to get some of the insights of, what's this arena like? What's that arena like? Backstage type of things, those are the things that can be little surprises for you when you get there for the first time. No big deal, but just, like, the tunnel things, what's Nutter like, I haven't been to Nutter in probably 10 years, so I don't know that Hobart thing. Nobody knows what it's like. So, I mean, that's going to be a new thing for a lot of people. So just try to get a little bit of insight there, and have a good time, man. Don't stress out about it, because you know what? You can't do anything about it.
Yeah. It's all kind of baked by that point.
Fellowship. It's a bunch of drummers in the same place, I mean, that's the beauty of it, no matter what, it's all the cool people in one place,
Yeah, I think that's the most fantastic part about it. I mean, obviously, when you go to World Championships, it's a competition, and we're all trying to put our best foot forward and do well, competitively speaking. But if we only measure our success by winning or something like that, there's only going to be so many people that can win each one of the classes. So the way you have to measure the success of the trip is being a part of that experience, a part of, kind of the marketplace of like all things percussion happening all at once.
Yeah.
Just being a part of that festival environment is huge.
Yep.
I think if I were to give a couple of tips for a group that's going to World Championships the first time, the first thing I would say is make sure that you map out all of your routes if you're going to be performing at multiple arenas. Make sure that you've kind of timed it at different times of the day. You know what to expect in terms of traffic or not traffic, and you know definitely like the way to get to the places that you're going to go to. At least whoever's in the lead vehicle, make sure that that stuff is mapped out because I will testify I've been down the wrong country road several times and been stuck in the middle of nowhere with my entire ensemble with me. You know, you're running on tight timetables there. So you want to make sure that stuff is dialed in. And then the other tip I would have, especially if it's your ensemble's first time ever, try to get into the arena and let your students see some performances before it's their turn to perform. Now, this doesn't work if you're one of the first ones on in the morning. So that's the one caveat. But if you perform a little bit later in the day, just getting your students in there, getting them into the seats, letting them kind of experience the acoustics and what the building feels like and what ensembles look and sound like on that stage really helps to tamp down a lot of their nerves when they're standing behind the curtain for the first time and they're about to take the floor. Even if you're an ensemble that's been several times before, if you're a scholastic group, even if you've only got 5 freshmen, just getting them in that building helps to quell some of those nerves and then gives you a leg up as you're going to set up for your first performance. Awesome. All right, John, I think I think we're going to wrap here in just a minute. Before we go, though, I wanted to kind of throw it to you and find out if there's just any other big idea, any other piece of advice that you wanted to share with everybody. You've given us so much great insight and wisdom tonight and how your ensemble got set up and how you kind of manage all the logistics of that. But I know you and I have both been around the activity for a long time. So I just wanted to throw this to you and find out if there's anything else you wanted to share with everybody that's checking out the webinar.
Well, I mean, you know, thanks for doing this. I mean, that's the best thing about it. I think that I just appreciate the opportunity to serve the kids. You know, I mean, that's my thing. I mean, at this point in my life, it's give back time. You know, and that's what I'm just trying to leave a legacy. I guess is what I'm trying to do. You know, and that's where I'll leave it. You know.
I love it. Fantastic. Whether you're in your 100th year of teaching, as John and I are, or you're just starting out in this activity, I think just being mindful of giving back and paying it forward and realizing how you kind of fit into this whole pantheon of these wonderful things that we get to do standing in front of all these great performers is huge. So, John, thank you for sharing that perspective with us tonight. Everybody that joined us, I want to thank you so much for spending a little bit of time with us. We have one final webinar coming up in a couple of weeks. Mike Jackson is going to be our guest. Mike of Broken City and also of Mission Viejo High School fame for many, many years. Really looking forward to getting a chance to talk with him. And John, I want to thank you so much for carving out a little bit of time and spending it with us this evening talking about the activity in Central Florida. Thanks.
Thanks.
All right. Good night, everybody.